It was sold to us that, you know, we really needed to do those things if we wanted to keep having hit records. And so we just did everything that came along. I mean, as time went on, we became a bit more choosy, but that fear of being forgotten, I think, was always there. See You, which was the first single from Broken Frame, was probably more poppy than the singles from Speak and Spell in a way, but a lot of the other...
Like, it's a two-faced tune, right? It's a bit Janus face. Like, the opening and moments in it feel dark and heavy and a bit somber, but it is ultimately very uplifting and joyous in other parts. So I would agree, but with an asterisk.
Songs on Broken Frame are much darker, like Frankie said. So...
The video for See You wasn't particularly dark, was it?
No.
Seeing Andy smile like that behind the register is just a joy. R.I.P. as always to Andy Fletcher.
All I wanna do is see you. Don't you know that it's true?
It surprised me that it became as big as it became. But from our side of stuff, it was early days. They still weren't kind of ready. So we were in the comfort zone.
We're generally very sort of like pessimistic people, but for a very short period we felt a little bit invincible. And when Meaning of Love came out, we expected it to do even better.
But despite all the places I've looked, it's still no clearer, it's just not enough. I'm still no nearer to being.
Another song I absolutely loved, probably when I was just about as old as that kid that they showed right there. Luca she's trying to figure out what she wants to do. She's lurking.
I remember it gone in the charts at number 5, and you know we sort of think it might go to number 1 and stuff. When we got off the airplane and got the chart, it was like gone down to 17.
And that was our first jolt of failure, even though it still, you know, got fairly high. It felt like a disappointment after See You.
Everybody was a bit shocked by that, but it wasn't one of their best singles.
Daniel thought that Gallup must have made a mistake.
While they're doing that sort of barbershop quartet style, I will say it's interesting because this documentary has already showed me, like, I sort of misunderstood the timeline. I didn't realize Alan was there pretty much from the beginning of this album, but was not involved in its composition, and that it was more, you know, he was sort of kept at arm's length because, you know, the band was trying to prove that they could make it without the guy they had started with. So yeah, it's interesting. I thought he had come in a little later in the process and he wasn't involved because he wasn't there. But yeah, obviously that was not the case.
You know, it was a bit too teeny.
I don't blame the press for not giving us much respect in those days. There was, you know, lots of like teen magazines around, like Smash Hits and things like that. And, you know, we did a lot.
The whole credibility angle, and I can't stress, you know, the importance of that as much. I mean, in those days it was vital. It was like, okay, we don't want to be interviewed, but we can put out a side of us that people are going to have to pay attention to. So artwork was the first kind of public sign of there is something more to this band. At the time, there were a lot of journalists who were all ex-art school, etc. So the link was being made. These guys, they might not make the music, but they're beginning to be fairly savvy in other areas.
Absolute tune.
Well, it was remarkable. I remember when I first saw the Polaroid, it was just unbelievable. And so after I processed them all up and Daniel came down to Rotherhithe here to the studio.
I popped down to have a look and I'm just looking on the light box and I seen these images. I just thought they were fantastic. I couldn't quite believe how strong it was.
When we actually saw the cover, we thought it was quite a stunning picture. And it did go on to win awards.
It was Sleeve of the Year, wasn't it? And it's just an amazing
clearly between this part of the documentary and the speak and spell part, Martin has finally felt a little bit warmer. He can take off his jacket and his beanie. I'm glad to see.
Picture, fantastic picture.
And it did go on to win awards.
Well, it was Sleeve of the Year, wasn't it? And it's just an amazing picture, fantastic picture. He made up for speak and spell.
I think it's one of the best things that we've done, actually.
Probably the greatest colour photograph ever taken, I think. I've been egotistical enough to say that and say, OK, find me a better one.
Brian had an idea for a photograph, you know, of some person kind of breaking the frame of the photograph. But I think I consciously wanted to steer it more in that kind of Russian iconic imagery, because it was something that I kind of liked the look of. Daniel was very much into.
I was saying it, or was thinking it looks like one of those, you know, agricultural productivity, like propaganda posters, either from, you know, the Soviet Union or perhaps like the PRC back in like the 50s or 60s.
We did have heavy discussions about it. So I would say it was a complete collaborative idea, really.
Brian would just come to the studio and talk about things, you know, and we wouldn't have a clue what he was saying because it was art talk, you know. He'd just go, yeah, I can see this, the field, you know. We'd go, all right, just do it, you know.
So we all set off in this location bus with my assistant Stuart Graham, Jackie Fry, the lady who's going to be the peasant. And it was just pouring with rain, just horrible. But one thing you know in photography is that rain can be really good, because when rain stops, the sky can become very interesting.
We had hailstorms and rain and all sorts of stuff. But, you know, Brian's ego will probably tell you that, you know, he did it all himself. Won't you, Brian?
Shots fired.
Atkins said he came up on his motorbike. He said, well, I've got to go out and get lunch then, you know. So he rode off on his motorbike for lunch. Then the rain stopped.
It was just one of those, as he would say, the magic was there, you know. It was the magic. It was the magic.
To be honest with you, I think the songwriting has got so much better. It's so superior to the early days.
It was not completely mature, the personality of Martin at the time of Broken Frame.
It still seemed quite poppy. I think Martin's depth came a bit later.
You know, for me, it really doesn't work as a whole, because, you know, some of the songs I'd written when I was 16 and we were, like, you know, reinventing them as electronic songs. You know, some of the songs I was making up in the studio, and, you know, I think it's probably, you know, for me, probably our worst album.
It was so difficult for us at that time, in retrospect. First of all, we'd lost our main songwriter.
Two things. One, it's interesting to hear that assessment, though on another level, I do get that things you make early on, like, you know, I'm a historian, I've been writing both like nonfiction especially, but also a little bit of fiction here and there. I've been writing for a very long time, and I see things I wrote even as recently as a few years ago, and it's like, God, I hate this. Like, I could do this so much better now, and it, you know, it annoys me that I made certain choices about it. So thinking that, you know, something you did 20 years ago, although at this point, what is it? Yeah, it's 05 or 06, right? So like, you know, 24 years before this, I do get that, like, you know, even though for me, all the songs are classic, very nostalgic, that for them, it's like, well, yeah, but that was, you know, that's us being, you know, very immature in the songwriting process and not really, you know, having a sense for the way we would do it now. So I get like distancing yourself from an early release, but as fans, it makes perfect sense to me. It's like, well, no, like, I think it's fantastic. So, Yeah, it's the two sides of creativity where, you know, people will always enjoy something that they connected with, but as an artist or as someone who works in some, you know, craft over time, you come to not so much like your earlier creations because you just learn how to do things a lot better.
The second album syndrome is that usually you get like slaughtered anyway, no matter what you do. And we kind of made this moody, odd sounding record.
And maybe by going with something like Leave in Silence was quite a bit of a reaction to that, to go with something that was much...
Leave in Silence, probably my favorite track from the album. I mean, I don't think there's a single track that I absolutely dislike, although, again, you know, there are some more favorite than others, but Leave in Silence is a masterpiece, in my opinion.